Thank you all very much indeed. I just want to say to anyone right up at the top there, if you're uncomfortable or you can't hear properly or whatever, there are a few seats on the lower level down here at the sides. So if you felt you wanted to move, there are a couple of seats just by the staircase. Thank you very much indeed. Fascinating. Now, we have quite a wide set of views here. Just to start us off, as we heard Mr. Gove yesterday talking about natural capital and talking about continued help for farmers to provide this, he actually said he would hope that there would still be the same amount of money, £3 billion a year, to go towards this. But how, I wonder, how would that be assessed? How do you assess a farm that puts in flood buffering by planting woodland, etc.? Do they get a one-off payment? Do they get a payment every year to maintain that? You know, how is natural capital assessed, or how would you like it to be assessed? Tony, first of all.
So I think we're just beginning the journey. It's a complicated question, and the answer probably is easier to see in some circumstances than others, because natural capital is very diverse. So, for example, if you wanted to look at water quality coming from a hillside, that's something that could be measured relatively straightforwardly. If you want to look at the carbon in the soil, it's probably more complicated. If you want to look at the flood risk associated with different land use choices, it's more complicated again. What you might anticipate in terms of farmland bird populations as a result of different interventions, again, quite difficult to calculate. But what we do know is that all of these things have big values that previously were invisible in policy choices. We were degrading the natural capital, and we were seeing that as the legitimate price of progress, if you will. And cheap food, obviously, was one of the frames through which we saw that. The environmental damage is permissible and acceptable because we need to produce a lot of food. And so that was the debate. We've moved on now because we know more about the natural capital. We know the status is going down. And we also know that if we look after the natural capital, some of the other things that society wants, the biodiversity, which I think is a different thing, can recover as well. Because if you manage a hillside for the carbon, high water quality, flood risk reduction, the chances are you're going to be managing it for insects and birds too. So I think this is a new conception. Yes, we've entered a new space. It's really complicated, and it's great to know that the Secretary of State has registered that change of direction, and what we now need to do is work on the answers to exactly your question.
Yeah, Julia.
Yes, well, I think there are three different ways. There's firstly, what does it cost to provide? There's secondly, what's it worth to society? And there's thirdly, what is society prepared to pay? And there are lots of environmental economics techniques for assessing, is it 3 billion? Maybe it should be 6 billion. Maybe it should be 1.5 billion. There are, in terms of the figures.
Yeah, tell the Treasury that.
Yeah, exactly. so it's, yeah. But there are different, you can do whatever calculation you like and come up with the answer. It's like, when you're bringing up a child, if you read enough different books on parenting, you can find one that suits your own style. So in terms of this, there are different methods of valuation. The key, if we look relative to other things, everyone says the NHS needs a lot of money, which it does. That's 146 billion a year. Defence is 27 billion a year. Is our countryside, if we just look big picture, is it worth 3 billion a year? If given it's currently 3 billion a year, we haven't got a clean drawing board. And I would say yes. Then the question is, how do you actually pay people within the 3 billion? And there it's a matter of if we wanted to provide those same benefits in another way. Say we had no farmers and we were going to employ civil servants to do that. There are alternative methods. That would be much more expensive. So I think we need to think, are we providing good value? And as long as it's good value, like my figure of £3.30 per visit to the Uplands, then that seems... Do people think £3.30 is good value for a day out in the countryside?
It's a bit like the BBC licence fee,
Yeah,
which
exactly.
is, you break it down, it's tiny. We'll let you all have a go on this. Mike, yeah.
I think it's quite important. You can talk about 2 billion, 3 billion, and it's where you go, and actually some of it is substituting. We are in a market economy, so people that are producing, and this thing about cheap food, we're producing quality food, we're producing the right kind of food, we need to adapt. But the biodiversity, we've measured biodiversity quite intensively. And you did say about it being a proxy. Well, I think there's loads of other things that need to be in that complex as well. So farmers are How would you pay a farmer in terms of, the Secretary of State was talking, they're doing soil health, they're using cover crops. We need a mechanism that